Today, we are going to get into two of the most common health challenges that can pop up during pregnancy: gestational diabetes and some very common infections. We're going to break down what they are, why they even happen, and probably most importantly, how they're managed to make sure mom and baby stay healthy. Okay, so to really get this, you have to think about what a pregnancy actually is. It's not just about growing a baby. It's more like the body is launching its most ambitious, most complex construction project ever. I mean, everything has to be re-engineered to build a whole new person from the ground up.
And to pull off a project this massive, the body doesn't just wing it. It has a master plan. You can think of it as a complete system-wide overhaul, where every single part is redesigned to support this new life.
Now, this master plan really hinges on two huge changes. First, rerouting the body's entire energy supply. And second, completely adapting its internal environments. And, while these changes are absolutely brilliant, they can sometimes lead to some temporary challenges.
So let's start with that first big one, managing the fuel supply. This is where a condition you've probably heard of, gestational diabetes, enters the picture.
Gestational diabetes, or GD for short, is basically a temporary state where the body just has a tough time keeping blood sugar under control. It's not that something is broken. It's more that the system is being pushed to its absolute limit by all the demands of pregnancy. And it's actually pretty common, affecting somewhere between 2 and 6% of all pregnancies.
Okay, what's so fascinating here is that we can pinpoint almost the exact moment things change. For the first half of pregnancy, the body is basically in storage mode, saving up energy. But then, right around week 24, it's like a switch gets flipped. The body goes into liberation mode and starts pushing more sugar into the bloodstream to fuel that baby's incredible growth spurt.
So why does this switch even happen? Well, it all comes down to hormones. As levels of progesterone and estrogen rise, they make the mother's cells a little bit resistant to insulin. That's the hormone that helps cells soak up sugar. And this is actually on purpose. It keeps more sugar available in the blood for the baby. To balance this out, the mother's pancreas has to work overtime, producing way more insulin. And if it just can't quite keep up with that huge demand, blood sugar levels start to rise. And that, right there, is gestational diabetes.
Which of course leads to the next big question, right? If all of this is happening on the inside, how in the world do doctors even know it's going on?
Well, the screening isn't just random. It's actually targeted specifically at those who have known risk factors. We're talking about things like being over 35, having a BMI over 25, a family history of diabetes, or if you've had GD or a very large baby in a past pregnancy.
And the process itself usually happens in two steps. First, people with those risk factors get a simple fasting blood sugar test pretty early on. Then, between weeks 24 and 28, right when that big metabolic switch is happening, at-risk mothers get a much more definitive test. It's called an oral glucose tolerance test, or OGT. And catching this is so important, because if it's left unmanaged, that high blood sugar can cause some serious complications for the mother, like a specific type of high blood pressure called preeclampsia, and it can also increase the chances of needing a C-section.
Okay, so that's the big picture, the body's fuel supply. But pregnancy also changes things on a much more, local level. So let's shift gears to our second topic, that changing internal environment, specifically the vaginal ecosystem.
So normally, this environment is kept healthy by protective bacteria called lactobacilli. They keep the pH acidic and basically act as bodyguards against harmful microbes. But during pregnancy, those big hormonal shifts can throw this delicate balance way off. You get fewer of those good bacteria and the pH starts to rise. And this just shows so clearly how a perfectly healthy environment can suddenly become vulnerable.
And this disruption can open the door for two really common issues. First is a yeast infection, or candidiasis. It's caused by an overgrowth of candida yeast and leads to some pretty intense itching and a thick white discharge. The second one is bacterial vaginosis, or BV. That's when other bacteria start to take over, which often results in a grayish discharge with a very distinct fishy odor.
And here's the crucial thing to remember. These infections aren't a sign of bad hygiene or something you did wrong. Not at all. Pregnancy itself is one of the main triggers, simply because of those powerful hormonal changes that are absolutely necessary for the baby to grow and thrive.
Okay, so we've laid out the challenges. The big question now is, what's the plan? What's the blueprint for managing them to make sure we get healthy outcomes?
Well, it really all boils down to team care. The goal is never just to find a problem and stop there. It's about actively managing it. And that takes a coordinated team of specialists. You've got your obstetrician for the pregnancy, a diabetologist for the blood sugar, and a pediatrician ready for the baby. They're all working together. For gestational diabetes, the management plan stands on 4 really clear pillars. Number 1 is a carefully planned diet. Number 2, gentle but consistent exercise. Think walking or swimming. Number 3 is frequent at-home monitoring of your blood sugar levels. And number 4, if those lifestyle changes just aren't quite enough to keep sugar levels where they need to be, insulin is an incredibly safe and effective tool during pregnancy.
And what about those common infections? Well, the approach is just as direct and effective. They're typically managed with pregnancy-safe antifungal or antibiotic treatments prescribed by a doctor, which work to restore the balance of that local ecosystem.
Now, managing these conditions is obviously super important for the 9 months of pregnancy, but the story doesn't actually end when the baby arrives. Just look at this number for a second, over 30%. What do you think that represents?
That is the chance that a woman who had gestational diabetes will have it again in another pregnancy. But even more than that, it's a powerful signal. It's like a heads up from your body, revealing an increased lifetime risk of developing type 2 diabetes later on.
So let's wrap this all up with the really important takeaways. First, think of pregnancy as a kind of metabolic stress test. It can reveal what your body might be predisposed to down the road. Second, gestational diabetes and infections are manageable challenges. They are not personal failures. Third, just being aware is the absolute first step toward a healthy outcome for both you and your child. And finally, try to see this time as an incredible window into your long-term health. What you learn now can set you up for a healthier life for years to come.
And that really brings us to a final thought to leave you with. Sure, pregnancy is just one chapter in your life, but it offers some incredibly powerful lessons. So what if we looked at these challenges not as problems we just have to get through, but as personalized health insights that can actually empower us for the rest of our lives?